Especially want to welcome Justin. He is with GoGo Grandparent, and many of our villages have used it, this service and this organization. So I'm going to give you a brief background on Justin. After graduating, I love this, from UCLA in 2011, self described series of failed projects brought Justin to the door of his grandmother, Betty, where she housed him for 3 years in her home in Torrance. Tired of his bad ideas, which I love, she told him to start GoGo Grandparent. Though they both agree he'll never be able to repay her, she receives a fresh bouquet of flowers every month, all the same. Justin, take it away. You're on mute.
Thank you so much, Barbara, and Steve for setting up all the technical wizardry behind the scenes, and to everyone for being here. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a little presentation. I think that this is going to work. Ta-da. Can everyone see that? My screen?
Yes.
With the 2020 Village
Good.
Conference?
Yep,
Awesome.
you're good.
All right, great. All right, well, taking the thread from where you just left it, GoGo's story really kind of begins with our Chief Inspiration Officer and my grandmother. This is her actually using us for the first time. In 2016, we're coming back from Coco's Diner. She was uncomfortable driving at night, and this was one of the first places that she wanted to go when we had the service kind of set up for her. And at this moment, this is like the story I'm going to tell my family at this particular Christmas. Like there was no further continuation of GoGo. Grandma just needed to get back from Coco's, and then she gave the number that we had set up for her to her friends, who gave it to their friends, and now GoGo has kind of grown. So what is it that we do? GoGo helps our clients continue to stay independent in their home by taking advantage of on-demand infrastructure in their community. We're a for-profit organization. We have been recognized by AARP in our work to reliably deliver over 2 million rides to clients that might have mobility impairments, visual impairments, cognitive impairments, dexterous impairments with their hands or arthritis. All you need to use GoGo is a phone. You don't need necessarily to use an app or have a smartphone. So you call a number and you can request a ride or other services from Lyft, Uber, or a variety of similar on-demand companies. We have now worked with hundreds of organizations throughout the United States. I think that I saw some folks in Massachusetts, and so that were here participating. So just calling out that in MA, we're working with councils on aging, municipalities, and recently we've expanded to our offering to include beyond just mobility, but also meal management and grocery management. So I want to kind of take the opportunity really quickly to talk a little bit more about how GoGo works, how it works for organizations, and we could talk a little bit more about some of the new services that we've brought out in response to the pandemic. So again, this is the history of GoGo. That first photo of my grandmother, we thought we were done, and we didn't think there was any more work that needed to be done. It was just a phone number that she could call. We quickly realized as the numbers started to spread that on demand, if anyone here has used Lyft and Uber, you probably know what I'm talking about. It isn't the most the reliable service for the demographic that GoGo had accidentally kind of ended up serving. The number kind of works this way. You call GoGo to request a ride. You call GoGo and you press 1 to get picked up from your home. You call GoGo and you press 2 to get picked up where you were dropped off last. We thought that was all that we would need, getting picked up from home, coming back to your home, and the return trip. And that was really just based on my grandmother's kind of agenda. She goes on a lot of round trips, but she doesn't do a lot of circuitous trips. Thinking that just in case something might come up, she might need to reach us or reach a team member. we set it up so that she could also press 0 to speak to an operator. And this is a photo of David and I. David's my co-founder. We were the first operators, and you can kind of see what the problem I'm about to describe. This lasted for the first 2 months, and then we had to start thinking about ways to turn GoGo into a sustainable business, because we had been woken up every night at 3 or 4 in the morning as East Coast clients were heading to the airport, because problems continued to occur. And so as we kind of thought through what the issue was with these on-demand platforms, we realized they just weren't designed to accommodate the needs of our clients. And so we, step by step, set out to kind of create what we now call the GoGo Guardian program, which is designed to improve reliability of these platforms and services for a demographic that has the impairments I talked about earlier. So quickly, this is kind of a map of the GoGo Guardian program, and it highlights the steps where GoGo gets involved. I'm not going to go through this in too much detail here. I have a case study coming up soon. But there's the filtering that occurs when a trip is requested, the filtering with the driver or with the car type. There's the management of the driver when they are assigned. There's the monitoring of the ride as it goes to pick up that client and then take them to their destination. And then finally, it's resolving any problems that occur after the trip. So an example, this is Louise. She's 85. She's hard of hearing, uses a walker, and because of that, isn't very comfortable getting into large vehicles. She can't step up too well. She doesn't carry a cell phone, and she called us to get to the salon from her home's landline. And she's now calling to get picked up from the salon's office line. So she's trying to go back to her home. So she calls us and requests a trip. Kind of going back to if you can imagine that map, the first step is when someone's requesting a trip, we need to kind of be ready to screen or filter drivers that automatically aren't going to be a great fit. So we request to Lyft or Uber that Luis is getting picked up, and they first try to send us Mark. Mark is great, but he drives a car that's too big. Luis is uncomfortable getting into larger vehicles. She told us that when she registered. So Mark's going out there now, and unfortunately, the car is just too big. So we're going to cancel this request, and if Mark is matched with us again in the future and we have a client that can get into big cars or even prefers big cars, that'll be great. But in this case, we're just going to have to cancel and re-request a new ride. Immediately, the next driver that gets assigned, Carol, we know based on our experience with Carol and her being assigned to other clients in the past that she's a great demeanor, wonderful personality, but she has a bad back and gets really uncomfortable kind of picking up luggage. Based on stuff that she has told our team before. So when we see Carol is assigned to this trip again, we realize that this is going to be a great fit. Luis has that kind of heavier walker. She's going to need to get something folded up. And so we automatically cancel and re-request again. The third driver is new, someone that we haven't worked with before. His name's Mohammed, and he's driving a car that at first glance seems like it would be comfortable for Luis to get into. But because he's new, we need to kind of get involved and make sure that he understands that this isn't going to be a traditional Uber ride, but that this is going to be a client that's older and has a mobility impairment. So Ivan, who's on our team, gives Mohammed a call through the platform, through Uber's platform. We ask him a few questions and make sure that he's comfortable loading up her walker into his vehicle. Mohammed he answers Ivan's questions in a way that tell Ivan and the GoGo team that this is a driver that's comfortable that we can communicate well with and who's comfortable working with, in this case, Luis. And so we sort of let this trip happen and we begin to monitor it. From Luis's perspective, everything that's happened is unknown. For her, this whole process has taken between 30 and 60 seconds. She was on the phone. Again, she's calling from her salon. So she's on the phone waiting for this driver to be assigned. Because the two drivers were already in our database and we knew this wasn't going to be a good fit, we were able to cancel quickly and re-request. When we found Mohammed, we read to Luis, who was waiting on the phone, Mohammed's name, the color of his vehicle, the model of his vehicle, and the last 3 digits of the license plate, and how many minutes it is until he'll get to the salon. And so now she hangs up from the salon. Moving into kind of the next phase, the trip pickup. Unfortunately, Mohammed has some trouble when he's going out to pick up Luis. There's some construction on the road and it's slowing him down. We had told Luis that he was going to be there in 15 minutes, but unfortunately, he's behind schedule. And so after a certain amount of time, in this case, in this area, though it does depend based on the area, in her area, 7 minutes of no change in his ETA, the system detects that there might be a problem and asks a guardian to give Mohammed a call to understand what's going on. And so either Ivan or another colleague call Mohammed and understand that, okay, he's in traffic. Someone needs to let Luis know because she might start to panic. So we call the salon, and even though the salon is a number that is not registered in our system for this trip, we know that that number is Luis's designated contact number. So we ask for Luis and let her know about the delay. When Mohammed is getting finally close to the destination and is 2 minutes away, we call again and let Luis know that she should start heading outside. Mohammed picks her up smoothly, takes her home. We call her after the trip to ask her to rate her ride. She gives it a 5 and then presses 0 to speak to an operator to schedule her next trip. There are tons of scenarios, really quickly about this, there are tons of scenarios that can go wrong when requesting a ride. And you really have to be on top of the experience the entire way. That was what we learned over 4 years of doing this. So in the beginning, we had a trip failure rate, maybe between 20 and 30%, which is not so great. And especially for people that are considering using GoGo to live in their home, what that means is that the service isn't reliable and they really can't, they would have to start thinking of other solutions. Because if 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 times the trip doesn't succeed, it's not going to be a solution to help you get to Coco's Diner. Today, after years of developing our GoGo Guardian program, we're very pleased to say that our trip failure rate is below 1%, creating a really reliable solution that older adults can use to live their lives. And especially during COVID, that pretty much is restricted just to medical appointments. But those are appointments that you really cannot miss, especially for like specialist appointments where it might take months just to get that trip. So that's a little bit more about the GoGo Guardian program. And I want to talk very briefly about how we work with organizations. Basically, an organization is able to gain access to our team, our GoGo Guardians, and the technology that powers that platform, and subsidize those trips and use them in any way that they like for their beneficiaries or members. And we have a ton of robust different options on how you can do that. You can make a subsidy that's automatic based on the geography of the person, where they live, where they're going, the time of day, the day of the week that trip is happening. So for example, if you wanted to only subsidize trips that were happening after 8 p.m., because that's when your volunteer drivers are no longer available, but you know that someone has kind of an urgent destination that they need to get to, you can make it so that if someone's calling for a ride, your subsidy might apply to that trip at that time on those days to those destinations. You can subsidize the full trip cost. You can subsidize the fixed dollar amount, like $5 to $10. You can subsidize a number of rides each month. You can also subsidize a budget. So you can say, I want to spend X amount of dollars over the course of the month. People can use up their budget until they finish with their budget, and then it rolls over if they don't use it. Excuse me.
Justin, we're just about almost out of time.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Well, I had some examples. I had some case studies. And then I won't talk about the new services that we launched. I can just end it here.
Well, and we'd like to invite you back if you'd like to come tomorrow morning and give us a continued conversation on GoGo Grandparent. We do have some space at the same time.
Tomorrow morning? Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
So I can tomorrow. Then I can talk more about the case studies and.
That would be great.
Yeah,
that would be awesome.
Sorry for the monologue.
No, not a problem.
Thank you for the
not a
gentle
problem.
interruption.
And Steve actually did put in the chatter, because Justin's being hosted by Steve's forum. I forget when, Steve. I looked at it.
November 4th. So
November
we got
4th.
Justin for a full hour.
Well, a full hour. So
or even more. And so
I really just went over it. So thank you. That sounds great.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's see here. we've got our first panel here that I'm going to bring on. We've got Mandy. Come on, Andy. We've got Natalie.
I'm here. Good morning.
Hey,
Hey.
Mandy, you can, I'm bringing everybody on. So if you want to just start your
Okay.
welcome here.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to hear that we have so many participants on our virtual Village to Village Network conference. I'm Mandy Summerson, and I'm the current president of the Village to Village Network. It is my pleasure and privilege to welcome and thank you on behalf of the network for attending this first ever virtual conference. We are so thankful to have you all joining us as we continue to provide the newest information and best practices for villages. As many of you know, each year we travel the country to meet, explore, and expand new opportunities in the mission of the Village Movement. And this year we were disappointed to have to cancel our scheduled in-person conference in Charlotte, but are very excited about the interest we have had in our virtual conference. I'd like to take just a minute to thank those who have worked day to day to further the mission of the Village Movement. Many thanks to our Executive Director, Barbara Sullivan, our Director of Operations, Travis Mowers, and our Office Manager, Betsy Claggett. Without their vision and hard work, this movement would not have the support to continue to prosper. Also, I'd like to take a few minutes just to thank our Board of Directors for your support and efforts to make this another great year for the network. And thank you so much to our planning committee, and in particular, Steve Gurney, for all your hard work to make this virtual conference a success. So now I would like to do a quick poll. Generally, when we're at our conference, I do this in person. I ask everybody to raise their hands for how long they've been in development or been in service. But we're gonna send out a poll to you all. And if you just take a minute to let us know, are you an opportunity village? Are you a village that's been open for less than a year? Are you a village that's between 1 and 5 years, between 5 and 10 years, or greater than 10 years? And then you can just submit that poll to us.
All right.
And Steve, do we get immediate results on that, or will we look into that?
Yeah, no, I will. Let me let it get up a little bit higher. We're at about 60% now. So here I'm going to end the polling and share the results. And those are the results.
Great. So you all can see, I think. Did they all see the results, or do I have to read them?
Yes. No, they can. Everybody can see.
Everybody can see it. Okay. So we can see the majority of our participants have been open less than 5 years. And then following that is villages that are between the 5 and 10 years, but very close behind that are our opportunity villages. And I'm happy to see that we do have 13% of our group that's been open more than 10 years. That's fantastic. So about village details. It's important to provide details about each and every one of your villages, so we as a network have the most detailed information out there. One way to be sure we have this information is to answer the questions asked when renewing your membership. Specific questions about your village are asked at the time of renewal. We ask you to please take a few minutes to self-report and not bypass this section. Our goal is to have 100% participation. In just a moment, Barbara will be sharing information from a survey we conducted to gather village characteristics of our network members. This tool can be very beneficial to you as you look for funding and while applying for grants. This information will be located in the documents library for you to refer to when needed. The survey results Barbara will be discussing are based on responses from 120 villages, and the survey was shared with 340 different villages in our network. And just for reference, we currently have 250 open and operating villages, 70 opportunity villages, and 5 hub and spoke villages. 3 villages have currently suspended services during COVID, but have made the decision to continue to be members of the network, of which we are very grateful. Please stay tuned today for many great sessions. Following our presentation of the survey conducted by the network, we will hear about the results of a survey conducted by our very own former Executive Director, Natalie Galusha, now with the Harvey A. Friedman Center for Aging Institute for Public Health at Washington University. Natalie will be presenting with Nancy Morrow-Howe with the Brown School of Schoolwork at WashU, and Madeline Franklin, Executive Director of STL Village in St. Louis. Following the presentation of survey results, join us for topics including finding your spot as a board member and fundraising, grant writing tips for village board members, staff, and volunteers, AARP's HomeFit updated for 2020, a conversation with the Village to Village Board of Directors, and Helpful Village's easy-to-use village software and their new COVID features added this year. I will now turn Zoom over to Barbara to share the results of the network survey.
Thank you, Matt and Mandy. I appreciate it. And I'm going to go through this. Keep in mind, we had about a 42% return rate. And I'm going to share my screen right now so you can. Oh, you got to see my grandson instead. Okay, so we did this village characteristics. As Mandy said, we sent the survey out to 340 villages, received 120 responses. A lot of the opportunity members decided not to participate, even though we really, really needed the participation of everyone. There was an opt-out, no response or not applicable. So I just wanted to go through these real fast. In the past was always kind of said that 60% of the villages were paid staff. As you can see, it's about almost 50-50 with our survey that came out with paid staff versus all volunteer. And of that, the all volunteer hub and spoke, it, kind of dwindles down. Keep in mind, I'm also going to be sharing this at the conclusion of our national gathering. So everybody will have this survey in their hands. We'll put it in the document library. This shows that our rural villages are really starting to become more of a thing, which we were kind of worried about as I, started my venture into the Village to Village network. We were trying to target more rural areas and not so much the suburban. As you can see, the suburban has really taken off. They've almost, caught up, the rural caught up with the urban villages. And it used to be that people had trouble finding out how to make a village in a rural community that potentially covers large service areas. But a lot of villages are figuring this out, and it seems to be more and more popping up. And I will say some of the hub and spoke models are taking advantage of the rural areas. Annual budgets. At first glance, you might say that this, most of the villages have budgets under 25K, but it really shows that most villages have a budget over, between the 25 and the 75. So, I'm sorry, yes. And so, again, we didn't get a great response on the budgets. 54% of the respondents had budgets over the 25K. So it's just a good statistic, especially with some of our developing villages, to know, who's out there and their annual budgets. The village characteristics, as far as, member villages and village volunteers. Again, this chart shows that 34% have 50 or fewer members, but an overwhelming majority of villages have more than 50 members, as you can see in this diagram here. Unfortunately, the majority of villages have less than 50 or fewer volunteers. So again, you're seeing some of the statistics here. we thought this was a great question to ask. Everybody says, well, who uses software? I know in our village toolkit, it's recommended that software can be a help in developing villages, but this is a pretty interesting statistic. A little more than half of the villages use specific software, but a good chunk of villages are not using software. And it's very interesting. We know that transportation over here is obviously the most popular. It used to be a statistic around 67%. So this is up slightly from the last time we did a survey. And then 16% do not offer transportation. The one thing that we did not ask in this specific question was before or after COVID. The survey was done in May. So, I don't know whether not offering transportation, and Natalie, I'm sure you're going to have this in your slides as far as what they're doing now post-COVID or during COVID. I think this is a very interesting slide. It's, question from the survey. 53% have no partnerships with organizations. And again, we took this survey in the middle of the pandemic. So as you saw on the first day, partnerships are just an overwhelming resource within the community. Senior centers, faith-based organizations, the COAs or the AAAs, and other nonprofits that are senior serving. And I think we're seeing an emergence of more and more partnerships and formal relationships with some of these senior serving organizations. So that was our survey. I know that we have a couple of quick questions. Yes, Mary, Mandy's stats will be posted. Steve asked, what is a hub and spoke? We have a model out there that is a hub and spoke model, and a good example. Some of the great examples are, the Portland, Oregon, where they share expenses. The hub has like maybe a staff person, and then some of the neighboring communities or towns or even sections of the city are the spokes. They have their own volunteers. They have their own, maybe executive director or board of directors. And so, but they use shared expenses. Another one is a little help in Colorado. And then Columbus has really emerged as another good model for hub and spoke. Defining partnerships. A partnership can be a relationship with a senior center. It can be, I know that my former village in our county, they're having trouble serving all the seniors because the senior centers are not, having social programs. And so talking to them and opening the door in the conversation with, existing aging services is a great segue to expand and show value for your village. So I'm gonna, at this point, turn my section over to Natalie and have her present, and then we'll have questions at the end also.
Right, thank you. Let me pull up my presentation real quick here. Okay, so thank you, Barbara. And actually, that was, you'll see in a couple of slides, pretty useful to have those stats because we used some of that data as well as we were doing our analysis, which I'll explain a bit more in a minute. But first, I want to thank again Barbara and Travis for all of their help with Village to Village Network, and of course, all of you who responded to our survey. I'm going to go over the high-level results of that as we go through the presentation here. So just a little bit of background and information about kind of how our survey came about. We created our survey to help us and all of you at B2B Network learn more about the true impact of the COVID-19 pandemic specifically had on villages across the country. So our online survey, which was developed with the help of STL Village Executive Director, Madeline Franklin, who you'll hear a bit more from in a minute, and also Barbara and Travis, included several questions under 4 main categories that we looked at, specifically village members, village operations, services and volunteers, and then social events. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to touch on the main findings from each of these categories as a bit of background. I also wanted to let you know that B2B Network sent the survey to open member villages, so about the 250 or so that Mandy referenced earlier, on our behalf back in June, and then we collected the responses through the beginning of July, and we received 116 responses for our survey. So here's a little bit of the breakdown of some of the characteristics that Barbara was just talking about, of what we gathered from the villages that responded to our survey. So as we were analyzing our data from our survey responses, we decided to look a little beyond just the survey questions that we asked and identified a few key characteristics, which are listed here. So all of our villages were open, and then to further understand the impact of the pandemic on different types of villages, we looked at these characteristics when analyzing the data to see if any specific patterns emerged. So as Mandy was just saying, it was very helpful to have that information, although we didn't have it quite for everybody, in order to delve a little bit deeper into the information that was provided through our survey. So later in my presentation, I'm going to note a few of these patterns that were statistically significant. So we looked, as you can see here, at village age, community type, membership size, and then also the operational model, all volunteer versus having paid staff. So as you can see, it's pretty representative and pretty comparable to the information of what Barbara just shared as well. So the first few questions of our survey, we looked specifically at what the overall reactions of villages were to the pandemic. It probably doesn't come as a surprise to you that the majority of the villages were affected quite a lot by the pandemic. And this chart here shows the top challenges that were faced by villages specifically, which the top 3 included here: membership recruitment, service request fulfillment, and the health and well-being of members and volunteers. So next, we get into kind of our more broad categories. So first, we asked about village operations and some of the specific things that go into that. So again, it's probably not a surprise that the majority of villages who took our survey lost revenue due to the pandemic, and many also saw a change in their expenses, whether they decreased or increased due to different factors. For operations in particular, we found that age and village type were significantly associated with these results, as you can see in the 2 bullets here on the right-hand side of this slide. Then when it came to membership recruitment and retention, many villages reported that they were not able to continue their normal membership recruitment efforts due to shutdown orders and other restrictions. I'm sure many of you experienced that, even if you didn't get a chance to take our survey. This number would have been even higher. Yet, in true village fashion, our survey showed that many villages stepped up and innovated to find new ways to reach their members and help new individuals in their communities through things such as temporary pandemic memberships and decreasing dues for their current members. So as Barbara mentioned a little bit, we did get some information about the types of services that were offered during this time as well, which I'll go into a little bit in a minute. All right, so then we also asked a little bit about member well-being. So, and as we all know, villages are member organizations, and of course, the villages were very concerned about the well-being of their members throughout the pandemic. They knew that the physical and mental health of their members would be impacted in a variety of ways, as this slide here shows. Villages found that their members were anxious, and they also noted that their care was disrupted in a number of ways, including disruptions to scheduling medical procedures, maintaining medical and/or therapy appointments, and exercise as well. So a little bit more about service provision and volunteers. So as I mentioned, Village's ability to provide services was also impacted by the pandemic, whether it be the types of services that were provided or the number of volunteers that were available. So we did notice through responses to our survey that transportation did tend to go down a bit during the pandemic, just because of that close person-to-person contact. But some villages were able to figure out ways to continue that or bring it back later. But a lot of villages instead ended up switching more to delivery services. So whether that be grocery delivery or even running errands and things like that, having more of that, that service provision instead of actually taking the member along with them. And so while we would have thought that there may have been a rise in services requested by members during this time, the requests actually remained the same or even decreased for a majority of villages. Maintaining and recruiting volunteers was also a bit of a challenge during this time, just as membership recruitment was. And then once again, the stats on the right-hand side of this slide were found to be statistically significant. So socialization efforts and events. Here we can see how villages were quick to adapt and do what was necessary to keep their members socially engaged throughout the pandemic. While the vast majority of villages had events scheduled that were canceled due to the pandemic, many were able to switch to virtual events via Zoom and other outlets, just like we're doing today with the Village to Village Network Conference. And so then, in addition to our close-ended questions that I just went over a high-level review of, we also asked a few open-ended questions to gather a bit more information. Each of these questions were analyzed and many similarities and major themes emerged, which I list on our next few slides here. We first asked, what was the biggest impact of the COVID-19 pandemic for your village? And as can be seen here, many villages reiterated a number of the things already touched on, such as they experienced increased social isolation among their members, having the need to transform their operations and services, and then also difficulty in remaining revenue, among a few others listed here. The next open-ended question we asked was about the biggest lessons learned. So as we've often heard throughout the pandemic, we've heard that these have been unprecedented times. And of course, that's no different for villages and their members. Yet, we know that villages have taken this time to learn a number of things, and listed here, such as how much they are valued in their communities, the value of technology, and the adaptability and resilience of their members. In addition to the lessons learned, villages shared with us a variety of opportunities and positive outcomes that also came from the pandemic. And these things they plan to continue to use and build upon in the future. Many villages will continue to use technology such as Zoom for events, and will continue some of their new service offerings such as grocery delivery. And many villages hope to continue strengthening and expanding connections and partnerships throughout their community. As Barbara just touched on, that was something that came up several times throughout our survey, that this did provide an opportunity to connect more in their community and create or strengthen their partnerships. So overall, the majority of these findings did not seem out of the ordinary from what we were expecting to find. If anything, it reiterated and reaffirmed what we already know to be true of the village movement. First, we most certainly found that there is a lot of variation among villages, and this includes the way that the pandemic impacted each of them. In summary, these results show that villages are innovative and adaptable. They took the negative and found something positive in it. Through the survey responses, we can see that they kept their operations running in whatever capacity they were able to, and that they drew upon the support of their volunteers and communities to keep their members safe and make sure their needs were met. Overall, despite this very challenging time for all of us, villages have continued to prove that they are sustainable and have maintained their value. So again, this was a high-level review of our findings. So thank you again to all of you, all the villages that were so open to responding. And I look forward to discussing it with you further during our Q&A. But first, I'd now like to turn the presentation over to Madeline Franklin, who's the Executive Director of STL Village here in St. Louis. She's going to provide some reflections on the findings as well as her experiences specifically with her village throughout the pandemic. Madeline,
Thanks.
to you.
Thanks, Natalie, and good morning. As Natalie indicated, I am the Executive Director of STL Village located in St. Louis, Missouri, and we are the only village in the state of Missouri. When the pandemic came, when we became aware of the necessity of shutting our operations, it was really traumatic to us initially. Our village is a very active social village. Although we do provide services such as transportation and grocery delivery and shopping, the majority of our members participate in the very rich schedule of activities that we offer. On March the 14th, our village members had gathered at Pie Pizzeria to celebrate Pie Day. And the following day, we had planned a presentation on who gets grandma's yellow pie plate. And then we became aware that the shelter-in-place order had been issued, and we were faced with the necessity of canceling all of our activities. As a result of that, we had to make a sharp pivot and decide, where do we go from here? As the only paid staff for STL Village, I made a decision that I wanted to keep our office open. I thought it was important, in light of what our members were experiencing, that they had the stability of knowing that we were still here for them. Interestingly enough, as a result, we were able to recruit new volunteers to support our efforts, which was very helpful because a lot of our volunteers are members and or part of the most vulnerable health population who did not feel comfortable in getting out and having contact with the public or with our members. So as a result, we were able to attract some new volunteers, and therefore our service requests to our members continued. With regard to our activities, our initial decision was we knew that it was important that we maintain communication with our members. We did not want our members to become isolated or for their anxiety level to increase. Initially, what we did was to make friendly calls to all of our members to find out in what way we could provide a service to them. In addition to that, we started with teleconferencing calls, things that we had done previously in person, such as our coffee clatches, we did via free conference call. Following that, we decided that we would then step into the Zoom world, which we did. And as a matter of fact, our founder, Gloria Gordon, called me one day and she said, Madeline, have you considered using Zoom? And as a result of that, the activities committee decided that we needed to reach out to our members to find out what their comfort level was as it related to digital platforms, as it related to contact activities. So we sent a survey to our membership, and we received a response with regard to the areas of their comfort level with digital platforms. And the majority of our members indicated that they did have a level of comfort using digital platforms. In addition to that, their preferences were first Zoom, secondly teleconferencing, and third FaceTiming. The next inquiry that we made dealt with what our members' comfort level was with having in-person activities with 25 members or less. And at that point, the majority of our members indicated that they were not very comfortable with in-person activities. Therefore, our activities committee had to continue to look into what kind of virtual activities that we could have. However, our members did indicate that they were comfortable with outdoor activities. So since June, we have had a number of outdoor activities. We meet in the outdoor patio for coffees. We have brown bag lunches in the park. We had our village annual picnic in the park. We're going to the boathouse. And so we have utilized, especially during the summer months when the weather was amenable to outside dwellings, have used outdoor activities as our primary way of getting our members together. However, with the fall here and our temperatures going down, we're probably going to have to go back to our virtual platform again. In addition to that, we asked our members what their comfort level was in riding in a car with another member, and 40% indicated they were not comfortable with that, as well as riding with volunteers. We did establish protocols for our volunteers to ensure that CDC guidelines were enforced, and we communicated that to our members as well. Finally, another issue that we had to deal with was with regard to our fundraising activities. Generally, our village has a fundraiser, an in-person fundraiser in October of each year, and we call it Village Aglow. And that particular fundraiser is responsible for about a third of our operating expenses. And so that was very crucial to us. Our board of directors and development committee decided that since we could not have an in-person fundraiser this year, we would do a virtual event. So we did a virtual Village Aglow. I'm going to encourage you to view it. It's on Vimeo, and I'll put the login information. But it was a 40-minute program that we pre-recorded featuring local artists. And I am pleased to say that we were able to raise, with the virtual fundraiser, practically the same amount that we would have done with an in-person event, considering there were less expenses involved. So I think that we have done a good job of adapting to the constraints that we're under in light of COVID-19. However, it certainly has had its challenges, such as our ability to recruit new members. As a result of that, we have started a trial membership, and we're doing some virtual recruitment activities. But we have suffered a loss in terms of new member recruitment as a result of our inability to get out and do outreach activities. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Madeline. So just to wrap up real quickly, I'll turn it back over to Barbara to help us with questions. But I would also just like to mention quickly that we will have an updated version of our summary report, which I know we had given to Village Network a couple of months ago, and that has some of our updated numbers that we've analyzed, as well as, of course, a copy of the presentation will be available after the conference as well. And we're also working on publishing a journal article right now. And of course, as soon as that is completed, we'll be happy to share it with everyone to access as well. So Barbara, I'll turn it back to you.
Oh, terrific. Thank you, guys. What a lot of information. And there is a lot of buzz going in the chat room. Some of it, I'd like to just say, I love seeing the postings. It's great. The shared practices. I did post something. We are going to have a COVID specific panel discussion next Tuesday, the 20th at noontime. Wendy Zenker, who's with Arlington Neighborhood Village, and Andy Gaines and Who's the third person? I'm drawing a blank. From
Elise.
Elise from Mill City Commons. And this is a great opportunity for shared practices. But you do have some open questions here that I thought I'd just send over to you guys. One is any difference between large and small paid staff versus volunteers? Is that a question, Doris, for Natalie or for us? I'm going to venture us. That was not something that we put in the survey question, which would be a very interesting question to decipher if it's a large, village or a small and paid versus. So, Doris, if you want to come on, Steve, did you want to pull Doris on? Do you want to ask the question directly, Doris?
Oh, sure. Let's see if Doris wants to raise her hand. If anybody, are we at the Q&A point here, Barbara?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, so if anybody would prefer to raise their hand and ask a question verbally, I won't put your screen on, your face on the screen. Just raise your hand by clicking the raise your hand button below. I'll give Doris the option to raise her hand before I bring her on, in case.
And one of the questions, Madeline, would you be willing to share your survey? You can do it one of two ways. You can wait. All of the conference materials are going to be shared at the conclusion of our virtual gathering. But if you want to share anybody who has materials, don't forget we have the general questions forms, and post those things in there. And people do love that chatter. So in the forms you can post your survey, but if you want to send it to us, we'll include it with the materials that we're going to do.
I'd be happy to.
That'd be great. So see if we have any raised hands.
No raised hands, so.
Okay,
folks,
well, let me go through a couple more. Madeline, again, we also surveyed, this is from Nicole. We also surveyed our members and many expressed interest in outdoor activities. However, when we hosted something, we had very few to attend, if any. Did you experience that?
So I think it kind of depends. Our first outdoor activity was a coffee clutch, and we had overwhelming attendance. I think people had not seen one another in so long, so they were extremely happy to come and participate. So I think our attendance has been pretty average or representative of what we had prior to COVID for those outdoor activities. Yeah.
Okay, great.
We got a few hands raised. Let me call on Kat first. And Kat, you can unmute your mic there.
Okay, so I'm Kat McIntyre from Bellingham, Washington. And Madeline, you mentioned virtual new member recruitment. What's that? How do you do that?
Well, actually, we borrowed the idea. We didn't create it from another village that had a virtual living room chat. And what we did is we sent out a flyer to our database, our prospective members. And on a Sunday afternoon, we just invited them to come, and we made a presentation to them with regard to the village and the village benefits. Nancy was on, she's co-chair of our ambassadors committee. And we fielded questions. It was very informal. And as a result of that, we recruited 2 new members. So we plan on doing it again.
Super. Thank you.
Great. And then we've got Paul, who's got his hand raised. Paul, I'm asking you to unmute your mic there.
Okay, thank you very much. Paul Sobel here with Village in the Heights in Cleveland. Madeline, you're doing virtual communications, and we've been doing Zoom meetings left and right. Unfortunately, we've hit our maximum of people who are willing to participate in online meetings. And we keep reaching out to the others, which is probably about 60% of our membership, who do not want to get online for various reasons. How do you build a comfort level with your members who have stayed away from that? We've offered Zoom for Idiots courses, we've offered education, we've everything under the sun. And as a result, we're not being able to offer the speakers and the yoga classes and the happy hours to the majority of our members that we want to offer and reach.
Well, we certainly are dealing with that whole issue of member engagement in those activities. And so from time to time, we do the teleconferencing because we do know that some members just aren't comfortable. We have done Zoom training. So we, make the telephone calls, encourage people. We're working with some students now from St. Louis University, and I have paired them with the member, and we've requested, I've had them to request our members to participate in Zoom training. Most of our members are internet savvy. However, concerns about security on Zoom are a concern as well.
So the marketing, the teleconferencing you're talking about is literally just getting people online. Do you have a conference phone that you work with?
Yeah, we use free conference call.
Is that an app?
No, free conference call is a platform, and it's actually free, but they ask you to pay like $4 a month or something for unlimited calls. Freeconferencecall.com.
Thank you.
I would highly recommend it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and it looks like we got another hand raised. It's Michael Raisin. Michael?
Yes. Talking about recruitment, I did an almost virtual recruitment. The member knew about Arlington Neighborhood Villages. She was encouraged. She wanted to join, so we sent her. We have an intake sheet that usually the volunteer fills out, but we sent that to her electronically.
Whoops.
We lost you, Michael.
Oh, we totally lost Michael. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Well, Michael.
Okay, well, maybe he'll come back in.
Yeah, let me, Sarah Fisher has her hand raised. Sarah?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Natalie, this is for you. I love the survey, first of all, those data points, fantastic. I can't wait to get my hands on it to share with my village. My question was on the membership size. You did like extra small, medium, and large maybe. And I was wondering if that was individuals or membership numbers, like memberships rather. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
So I would have to say, well, really it's based upon the numbers that are reported to Village Network in your profiles, like Mandy was talking about. That's where we pull that information. So I think however people normally report it in there, which I believe would be more members, but Barbara, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right.
Okay.
So it's in individuals?
Yes, individuals.
Okay. I just wanted to be able to see what size my village is to be able to report that out too.
Right.
Sure. And normally they're broken down in more categories like 0 to 50, 51 to 100, 101 to 150, but we collapsed some of those just so there weren't quite so many numbers to report on as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it broke down.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, and this is great. We're getting, it looks like we got Diane who has a question now. Diane?
Yes, thank you. I'm in Cheverly, Maryland, and nice to see you and Natalie and everybody. Thanks for doing this. The last conversation we just had about members versus memberships, I was so surprised at your answer, Natalie, because it never occurred to me that the people we list as VTV members, you know, so they can participate in VTV, that is serving as a kind of surrogate for our members. I mean, in the survey, I can't remember because we had several surveys from different groups, but I would assume I would simply list the numbers of members or memberships that we have, but we certainly don't list everybody for VTV. We would only list those who are going to a conference or who need, you know, who would like to in some way participate in the archive and that kind of thing.
Right. So we were referring to your additional member data that which you would report the number of members that you have in your village. So we're not going with like the number of secondary members or anything, but the number of members you've reported that you have currently in your village.
Okay, I'm still a little fuzzy, but that's, I think the survey itself probably asked how many members in our village or something, and I would have answered it accurately there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Barbara, we've got Carol Neza raising her hand, but Barbara, oh, actually, she's the one with the question about the hub and spoke. So Carol, I see that you typed in a question, but it would be great to hear it from. Whoops, Carol, say something. Uh-oh.
There she is.
Oh, she just, Carol. Well, let me read Carol's
Yes.
question.
Oh, good. She's there.
Oh, Carol.
Yes.
Okay, you had a question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this is my question. The traditional hub and spoke, I've known about that for a while and not really closely, but like Portland has, it sounds like it's great, but that's the traditional. And I just wondered if anyone could please give a model of what I would call non-traditional hub and spoke, that if there would be a hub that publicizes various services that are now going on, but separately from a village, because we do have lots of different little groups doing things such as programs. One little group or one person maybe does programs, and then there's another group that is in charge of, or they take the responsibility for transportation. They have software. Don't know if they're doing anything now during the virus. And then there's another group that listens to people on the phone, puts a little ads in the local paper and listens to people who want to talk about their gardens or about recipes or whatever. And then we have another group that helps people in, especially in emergency situations when they have to get a lot of trees and brush and grass cut with a emergency order from the city, code violation. So we have all these wonderful people doing these wonderful types of things, but there is no really center. Would a hub work somehow? Is there any model like that?
No, because what you're talking about, or like what villages traditionally do, is have committees that take on different like areas of expertise, whether it's the committee that is the caring committee and they're the ones that are calling around, or the services, there's people who vet vendors, or I'm just trying to think of what other and what you're describing is a function that many villages do normally. It's just
Right.
Another additional service.
We don't have a village. We're all spread out in our city, and it seems like people in different areas of the city, because of the individual person's motivation and expertise, are doing separate things. There's no village. So
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is I'm just looking for a hub that would make these clear to everyone, even though it might not be called a village, but the hub would really be trying to be a village, but at least making the services that do exist, but people don't know about them if they don't live around where it's happening.
Carol, where are you located?
Near the University of Maryland, College Park.
So it's a good question. I mean, that's not Montgomery County, is it?
No, Posse is in Montgomery County. We
Right,
don't
right, right.
have
Sure.
that.
It's something to, like we always say, there are different models out there. I mean, we're not, we don't box ourselves in and say, oh, you're an all volunteer or you're half paid staff or you're a hub and spoke. You create whatever model you want if it works within your community, if there's different sections. So if your hub and spoke, is not the traditional where, there's shared expenses and there's different sections. I mean, there are so many different hub and spoke models going on out there. I mean, the state of Rhode Island is going to create their own hub and spoke model, and they're in the throes of trying how to see how they can develop it. And like you say, different interests in different, communities. And Delaware is another one. I mean, Jackie Sullivan, I don't know if you're on, but, they're looking at statewide, type of how they can do a resource. So it's not unheard of, Carol. It's just, I don't think we have any set model right now to support that.
I'll just keep looking at places like Rhode Island, Delaware, and
Oh, and the other one is the Berkshires, Howard Shapiro up in the Berkshires. I mean, these communities are developing what their needs are, and their resources. And, just like any village out there, there's villages that are all just social, and they don't do any volunteer services. It's just a social program. So it's what you create within your community is the best answer I can give you right now.
thank you for that answer. Thank you.
You're welcome. No problem.
Barbara, do you want me to call in one more question?
Yeah, I
or-
think we have one more and then we're going to have to transition.
All right. That's Debbie has her hand raised. Debbie?
Yes, thank you very much. I was in a meeting last night. We're working on social justice. I'm in the Chicago area. And, we had people from their 20s to their 80s on the call. And I just want to give a plug for doing intergenerational work because one of the 20-somethings created a mutual aid app for their community so that if people needed something, they could ask, and if someone could provide this product or service or whatever. And, we have young people who can create apps in a short time to solve some of the problems that we're talking about. So the more ways we can work with students and people's grandkids, I think a lot of this stuff can be solved through technology, as we saw from GoGo Grandparent.
I totally agree. My millennial children know more than I do. I'm telling you right now. And getting them to, join in with the community-based efforts. I mean, they were raised by me, so obviously social justice is a part of our lives, but it's good to hear, Debbie. I like it. I encourage everyone. I know we're out of time. I want to thank Nancy, Natalie, and Madeline, and also our illustrious leader, Mandy, who I don't think is on right now, but thank you all for your time, your energy, the work, the hard work, continue. There's Mandy. We do appreciate everything. Stay tuned. We're rolling into our next segment.
Okay, so let me advance our speaker, Betsy France, here. And let's see, stop video. Okay, Betsy. This is like juggling on your computer, doing all that.
I see her.
Yeah, there you go.
Give me 1 second. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, so I'm gonna have to, yeah, thanks, Steve.
All right.
Give me a second and I'll.
No problem. I'm going to introduce you. So